We are on.
Oh, I see it now.
First and foremost, good evening. We had a
Yes.
wonderful talk earlier today, unfortunately around the kitchen table with no microphones.
I know. We gotta start. Not that we gotta start recording, but those things are always entertaining, especially the way that the conversation flows. The
I think
51 mark, the 51% remark was quite funny. So, anyways, I told you guys earlier, and I'm sure you're obviously not opposed. The right thing to do would just be talk about things that caught our eye or that are in current events, but talk about them in ways that are like policy related.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Although I did want to add in
can't even think of anything that's
some more from earlier today and just get your thoughts on it. And that was like the idea of like, and I'm assuming this is where you're going with it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like on a basis of like limiting a CEO's pay. Or I should say like advanced like senior executives.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it definitely shouldn't be. It definitely shouldn't be that some people make. There's got to be a line that we can draw where we can say, all right, like if you make more than this, like what's the point? And I don't know. Not necessarily that sounds too aggressive. That sounds too aggressive. But what I mean is like, dude, especially when we dug into that, and this was what, like a year ago now, when we dug into that, like the tax code and what that meant. Having that progressive tax code, it didn't mean if you make $5 million, all your taxes are taxed at 90%. It just meant like everything past $5 million is taxed pretty highly.
Right.
Because like every dollar after $5 million is like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, what else do you need? Like, you make a lot of money, okay? And if the poorest among us, regardless of why, yes, we can have a discussion as to why, if the poorest among us can't get by, like, I don't know, maybe you should invest in helping people out a little bit.
So like I absolutely get where you're coming from there. Okay. What I would like to point out is limiting somebody's pay. Let's say you have a CEO and you're going to limit them to like $5 million a year.
Sure.
Somebody that makes $20 million a year. Of that 15 million, like how many people do you think would be like their jobs would be saved if the corporation was required to spend that on people? This Walmart thing, right?
Yeah.
How many jobs do you think would have been saved if Walmart's CEO was limited to making X amount of dollars per year, per cycle, per whatever the case may be?
Not
surprisingly, it wouldn't be a ton.
Especially
it wouldn't
in
be
this,
as many as we
no,
think.
it wouldn't. I agree. Especially in the sense of Walmart, you're not wrong. Yeah, I agree.
Well, because
it wouldn't be a ton. And so that's why I'm actually not opposed to, and I'll lob this grenade in. I'm not opposed to eliminating income tax and supplementing it with taxing corporations in a way, or entities that use and abuse our workers and our environment. Because I agree that if you're working for an entity, I think you should keep as much of that money as we can allow you to keep, especially when it comes to income. There's better ways to tax and figure out how to pay for the federal government, I think. Now, I can't go into specifics, but generally, if you kind of get what I'm saying, there's all kinds of different ways to do this. And I think that eliminating income tax might make sense.
What if you eliminated income tax on those that make less than, $150,000 a year combined family?
Dude, I'm about it.
75,000.
Yeah, I'm about it, and I think Trump should take the corporate tax rate back to 35, and all that money that the corporations were saving, put it back to where it was, because it's not like it wasn't working before, and then take that and cut the middle class's taxes. And I said that earlier today. Like, you want to get populist to the extreme? There you go.
Well, I don't think the goal obviously is populism, but
No.
I just wanted to point out that just because you limit a CEO's pay doesn't necessarily mean that you will have the ability to save a ton
Yeah,
of
but that's only one.
jobs.
That's only one executive. There's a ton of executives, especially an entity like Walmart.
Well,
So
still,
I would challenge you to, yeah.
part of it and a lot of it that I feel like we forget is like things like payroll tax is insanely expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
and
you're
I don't really
paying
know too much
essentially
about payroll tax. I'm not too familiar with payroll tax.
so for
I
somebody,
know
and this
what
is
it
my
is. I
like
know.
very limited understanding, is that you're paying essentially 60%
Yeah.
of the person's pay back to the government. So if you pay somebody $10 an hour and they work 40 hours a week, so they get $400, you're essentially paying another 300 some odd dollars in taxes to pay that person their $400,
That
which includes
so
like,
so so you so there's a higher than 50% effective tax rate for what you're paying out to your employee that you have to pay to the government as well. That doesn't make any sense.
yeah, it does,
That's
because that's what covers workers' comp. It's what covers insurance. It covers short-term and long-term disability. It covers all of these things that we have as a government.
sure.
Corporations pay for that through payroll tax.
Mm-hmm.
My point is that even if you were able to save somebody from like their job or be able to keep them, like it's more money than we think. It's not just paying somebody $10 an hour, because not only does the government
Mm-hmm.
tax that $400 that that person gets, they also tax the corporation for having the person on their payroll. A lot of taxing, I guess, is what I'm saying. And again, even if you were to save a bunch of executives, say, hey, you can only make this much money, I'm not sure that we would save as many quote unquote jobs as you think we would. Plus, if realistically, if those jobs are unneeded, that money's going to be spent on R&D anyway, not on more employees.
So employers and employees definitely contribute to Social Security tax.
What's the rate? Because remember, you also have federal payroll tax and you have state
Yeah, you've
payroll
got a
tax.
bunch.
And I get that there's a reason for it, right? I understand that we want our employees or working class to have insurance against disabilities, against work accidents, against all these different types of things that can unfortunately happen when you work. But the thing is the ultimately what I'm getting at is limiting one person's pay or a collective group's pay doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get what end result you were looking for. Because if I'm a company and I literally don't need those employees, I'm not going to keep them just because I can only pay my executives so much. I'm probably going to use that for research and development.
Yeah, this is some weird, complicated shit.
I guess that's
Can't
also
even
my
read.
point. That's why we have
Can't
tax
even read the Wiki.
lawyers.
Can't even read this and like understand it fully on Wikipedia. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I hear what you're saying. I sympathize with what you're saying. I understand why
It
you have
also.
empathy for the worker. What I'm saying is, though, ultimately, is I'm not sure that limiting somebody's pay is the best way to go about fixing that problem.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is
I
like you were
kind of wish.
talking about, and I
I
also
kind of wish
wanted to
they.
point this out real quick, is the whole idea that like the stock market, right? It's all about getting profits, right? It's all about maximizing profits for, and what you said specifically was rich people.
It's a
But like
variable. It's a variable.
it is. You're correct. But it's not just for rich people. Like all of our 401ks, all of our IRAs, all of these different um financial vehicles are they're all tied to the stock market. So collectively, if you have a 401k, or if you have an IRA, or if you have some sort of a savings plan, like you're benefiting from this maximization of profits because that's what you're going to retire on. It's not exclusively for the rich. It's all of us, right? I mean, I know I have a 401k and I have an IRA, and I directly benefit when a corporation is more efficient and cost cutting and drive profits. I benefit from it. I don't want that to go away. That's what I'm going to retire on. So there's other factors that have to be considered when we're talking about this larger.
Oh man,
It's
so
tough.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that I'm anti the worker, right? What I'm saying is that all this stuff is so intertwined at this point that it takes a lot more than just saying we're going to do this. Like there has to be a fully thought out, functional plan. And by the time you get to that point, most people aren't going to agree with you anyway, and it's hard to get anything passed. I just want
yeah.
to get your thoughts on that.
I, I I am always skeptical of leaving leaving our retirements and our decision making into the hands of like a few powerful people, I guess. I guess that's not the right way to say that. Hang on. I am skeptical. I, I don't know. People abuse power. Obviously,
Sure.
Citizens United makes me not want to necessarily lean towards your side for now, because Citizens United has really allowed big money and interests to sway decision making. So I'm just not inclined to ever feel too much sympathy for, especially for the haves. I don't know. I firmly believe that we had better opportunity and um, a better functioning, I don't know, society back when we had higher tax rates and um, didn't have such rampant inequality. So I don't know. Inequality levels right now, if we're going off government data, inequality levels right now are actually really bad compared to like historic levels, especially since World War II.
Yeah.
So
Just
I don't
you're not
understand.
you're not
Right,
getting an argument from me there.
right. I know. I just all of these things. When I add this all up, I just sure we always do have to be careful that we're not crossing the line of excessive redistribution to the point of demotivating people. But that's not what I'm talking about. That's never what I'm talking about. I'm only talking about what I see as too much inequality. There is a certain amount of inequality that's healthy, but it's too much right now. And then, like I said, throwing in Citizens United just makes the whole thing worse.
Let's see. That's
And
another
so,
interesting one that I would also like to talk about is the
yeah,
whole idea of lobbying. Because I don't think you and I are actually against the idea of lobbying. I think we're against the idea of using campaign finance in order to influence people.
yeah,
Right. Because at the end of the day, right, a
yeah.
protest
So,
is in fact a lobby. But what we're really talking about
right.
is
And I was
using
about to say that.
using funds in a negative manner, or
Right. I
I
was
shouldn't
about
say
to
negative.
say a lobby could even be a conversation between a couple people, and you're just trying to convince them with your evidence. Like that could
Right.
be a perfectly reasonable lobby. Yeah, what it is it's the money. It always comes back to the money.
Yeah, right. And
It's
that's where you and I absolutely 100% agree that that needs to change significantly. Like to the point of
right.
you're not allowed to advertise. You're not allowed to, right? You can have a website and you can have Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about not allowed to advertise, but let's go back to public funding is what we kind of used to have for a while. Um, when we had it public funding, we never had a problem with well, this side's getting more money than, which actually I don't really care if one side outraises the other. That's not really a problem. That's people choosing to donate their money.
Mm-hmm.
But when we had public funding, each candidate got the same certain amount, which I don't know. I just so sick and tired of powerful interest. So and when we talk about those CEOs, like I lump them in with like, yo, that's powerful interest. And I would also say that if a CEO makes, let's say, 20 million in a year, which is probably not so far fetched,
No, not at all.
if you lopped off 15 million from that, how many jobs does that save? Not too many. That's a fair point. But if you just chop that up and distributed it amongst the already workers,
Okay, let's do that math
that
then.
makes a big difference.
Let's
And
use
we
it.
always
Let's use an
talk about.
example.
Well, hang on. I've got a lot of people who always tell me, not a lot of people, but I do have conversations with some people who say, well, even if Trump only cut your taxes $100, that's still $100 that's in your pocket. That's a big deal for middle class Americans. It is. You're right. Split up 15 mil, $200 each way for a lot of these people that don't make a lot of money. That makes a difference. And that's 15 mil that was already past the 5 mil this one person made.
Right.
And look, I
Problem
know
is,
that sounds like, I know that is redistribution scares people, but I don't know. I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but we need to think differently at least.
yeah, I mean, I think part of the issue is that unions were completely destroyed by unions themselves. They just self-cannibalized and fucked everything up,
Yeah.
right? Because you had people
Yeah, I don't
saying,
disagree
"Okay,
with that.
here's a fair wage," and I'm not against people saying, "Hey, this is what we would like to do." What I'm against is these
Right.
unions using
Eh,
that power and political influence for things that
right. Right. But why do unions get demonized more than the actual businesses? Businesses use their power and influence to do stupid shit and sway people in negative ways, and lawmakers too. So I don't,
but they
sure, we
are.
can
No,
demonize.
no. The difference is
Oh,
is that one was
yeah.
you don't expect that to be like you're for the worker,
And I get that.
right? We
The
expect our
one was
corporations to
literally
be competitive and cutthroat in every way,
right.
shape, or form. That's capitalism for us,
Yeah. Right.
good or bad.
Right.
That's what we expect from our businesses. Be
Right.
cutthroat, to be
Right.
use every advantage and every
I
resource they have available to them to continue to survive in a given marketplace. Whereas we don't expect unions to do that. We expect them
yeah.
to be for the worker. We expect them to use their collective power to make sure that the collective is taken care of.
Right. So if you start an organization that's supposed to be for some sort of greater common good, yes, you're right. You're supposed to be for that greater common good. But the problem with human beings and the problem when there's concentrated power is it gets abused, and it always does. Um, and I agree with you. I think the reason why maybe unions or union like organizations get raked over the coals more is because they were supposed to be
They're supposed to be
the
that
high
thing.
road. They were supposed to be better, right?
Right, right, exactly.
Um, so, but
And
I
it's
have
not
a
fair to
problem.
them because they're sorry.
I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with us saying that it didn't really work out. I have a problem with us not having a solution and just letting the businesses fill up more of that vacuum in the meantime, which is what I see and I don't like. Um, so that's what's, and there's a ton of variables into this too. We had a lot more retail jobs than we used to. We don't have as many manufacturing. There's a lot of variables, but
There are, but I think that maybe
right.
some things that communities maybe should be doing to some degree is
Mm-hmm.
maybe teaching how to negotiate. I don't think people really do that a lot anymore. You know what I
Negotiate
mean?
in what sense?
Like when you go work at a and
Oh, oh yes.
you get offered a
So
job,
leverage. Right, leverage what you can as a worker. No, I agree. I think that people hurt
things like
themselves by
that would
being too
be
apathetic.
right.
Yeah, people are too apathetic, and a lot of times my friends complain about the status quo, but they're not doing anything to get out of the status quo.
Right.
And that to me is inherently stupid.
Which goes back to my
Um,
favorite thing, which is personal responsibility. 51%, baby.
right. Right. I agree. I
Right,
agree with that.
but
At the
maybe
end of the
having
day, it's
those,
on the
maybe having
at the end of the day, it's on the
communities.
person.
Well,
But we can
and
but
to
why
be
can't
fair,
we can at least have an honest conversation about the fact that sure we still have a country full of freedoms, but we need to have a conversation about the fact that opportunity is a lot less than it used to be. Yes,
it is.
is
Yeah.
opportunity still there? It is. But if you have to work 3, 4, 5 times harder, why? We have to at least ask ourselves why did that happen and how can we change that? Um so
I'm
and
not
we also have to
disagreeing with you
confront a
there.
lot
It's
of different
just
variables. Automation, geez, not good.
it's great.
People say, "Oh, these fast food workers want $15. All it's going to do is automate their jobs."
Well, it did.
Yeah.
But you've been to the McDonald's on 31 lately?
Hang on. Yeah, but those jobs were already going to get automated. I'm not going
Sure.
to criticize people for trying to stand up for more money and their
I'm not
rights. Well, I just
criticizing
think they
you.
get
I'm just telling
demonized.
you that
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you. I think
technology
society, yeah.
this is technology. This is what's going to happen, regardless of who stands up for what. Like it's just a
Yeah.
virtue of technology growing.
Yeah, it makes me sad when regardless of who these people are and how they got in this position, if you're someone who's older and you do put in 30 to 40 hours a week at a fast food joint, you have a job. You march the streets for a little bit more money. It makes me sad that people demonize. Some people do. They demonize them, and it's like they're
Well,
working. They're
no,
working.
I'm
They're actually contributing to society. Well, I'm not saying anybody. I'm not saying me or you are doing it. I'm just saying
right. But it happens in
just
every situation, right?
sad.
You
It
you
does.
also have
It
people
does.
demonizing CEOs, right? It goes
Right.
across the
Which
board.
is what I was doing. That's fair.
Everyone
That's
has
fair.
something that they demonize.
That's fair. Yeah, we can agree on a lot, but
All right,
I
hold
don't.
on. I'll be right back.
How do we? Oh yeah, sure. Go
Give
ahead.
me 1 second.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
No worries.
Let's see here. So, what were we talking about? I apologize. You were talking about something.
I don't remember. No worries. Oh, that's right.
Do you have a list, by the
I
way?
just feel like I wish we could just come up with a solution. The only way we can though is if we were actually behind the scenes, like, and we saw all the data and all the information, and we had a conversation with all. Because I don't really know enough about payroll taxes, and I understand enough about federal income tax, but that's one part of one big ass code. So
right.
yeah, you'd have to. There's a lot of shit you have to consider. So I also don't like when people just straight up fib about what they're actually doing. So like when the Republicans passed when they passed their tax cuts, they kept saying like, "Oh, it's going to be so much simpler." They were pulling out this postcard. I don't know if you saw that. Trump and Paul Ryan would pull out a postcard and be like, "Postcard billings." Like that was a total lie. Like the tax code is still complicated as fuck. Like it's ridiculous.
Right.
If you want to change it to a simplified tax code, then do it.
Well, that's why there
And
has to be like a group
and
that has a bit
right.
more clout
Well, look,
that can sit here and call BS when they see it. That's what we don't
Yeah.
have. You know, we don't have a group that sits there and can say, actually what you said is completely wrong, and then post it on every single feed they can possibly post it on. Like, dealing with that particular
I'm
person.
And look, I get that, the government's big and things go through a process and things need to get negotiated. That's fine. But when you have a pretty strong public opinion on something, I'm pretty sure no matter who you are, Democrat, Republican, like you'd like the tax code to be simpler. Nobody's going to disagree with that. Everyone's going to agree with that.
Right.
And so you need to use, if you're a politician, especially if you're the president, use that leverage of public opinion against the politicians. If there's if you promise like a simpler tax code and they're like, well, all we can come up with is this jumbled mess. Like, here it is. If you're President Trump, this is he could have been the greatest president we've had in a while, because he could have gone out in the public, because he does it better than anybody, and been like, this is full of shit. And this is not what we wanted. And right. I got a bunch of experts together and we actually came up with a pretty simple one, and it's really simple, and like showed it and no shit, showed the evidence and was like, and this is simple, and your politicians came up with trash. Everybody would have been like, we love President Trump, like we love, because right. That's what they want. Use that leverage. And then the politicians are gonna have to be like, shit, well, now he's using his populism, which is what I thought he was going to do, against us, and we have to kind of kowtow to interests because they're popular.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but the thing is that he's not actually running anything, yeah. Right? And this is my general feeling about most presidents, is that they're not actually running anything. I feel the same about Obama as I did with Bush, as I did with Clinton. Like, they're not that they don't have clout, but a lot of what they do, it's impossible for one person to have an idea and a plan about every single thing that goes on in this country. It's impossible.
Right. No, and I knew where I knew where you were getting with that. I knew you weren't criticizing that. I knew you were just saying like it's too much.
It is.
It's too much for one person. It is. Right.
And so because of that,
and I also know that. Well, hang on. I also know that it's too much for one person. That's why they didn't get around to everything. I don't think Trump gets around to anything because he doesn't care.
And that's a different type of
right.
What I'm talking about. I'm just talking about in general with presidents.
Right. Yeah, that's impossible. True. And people put too much stock in presidents, and they tie presidents to everything, which is dumb and not reality. But Trump, that's why when he first got elected, a lot of people were like, dude, he could actually be one of the best presidents, not best presidents, but he could be one of the most consequential ones I've ever been, because he's got he was elected on having a blank slate to like be a game changer. He could have came in and just brash populism, just thrown himself around with his populism, and people would have loved him. And it is a mystery why he did not do that. It's becoming less of a mystery to me because I'm realizing that he's really not in charge of anything. He just has a lot of people that are like guiding him, and he doesn't give a shit. They had an opportunity there. Oh man, but if I was a politician, I would be doing that all the time, especially with the internet. Geez, in the age of the internet, I would be using popular opinion as leverage in every way in every instance that I agreed with it. For sure. The Colorado senator, the senator from Colorado that's a Republican, Cory Gardner, is not a fan. He's been on a record as saying he's not a fan of the legality of marijuana there, but he respects his constituents' choice. And when Jeff Sessions announced like that weird like pseudo crackdown a couple weeks ago, even though he's not a fan of marijuana, he was like, look, this pisses me off because this is what my constituents wanted. And I was like, I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean that's tough across the board.
It's obviously a fine line to toe, because if you don't toe it well, you can be seen as just pandering to whatever people think. But this is the kind of guy that doesn't seem like that to me. He just like, hey, look, if you can still have ideals, but sometimes say like, look, they voted for this, and since they voted for it, what am I going to say? So that's what I like more about Republicans. They're more about like freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm down for it. So
yeah.
Oh, we live in weird times.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in something.
I know. Well, that's why I think it's solid times for some sort of third party. Not, national success or any kind of crazy success, but there's enough of a anti-establishment streak that, as long as you don't F it up, you try to start something, and as long as you speak coherently, you'll be able to cobble something together. There's just so much anti-establishment. There was a lot last year, or there was a lot in 2016 too, don't get me wrong. And then I think there was a lot of happiness amongst people who were anti-establishment voters in 2016, but I don't know that Trump's record really has or should make those people happy. He's been pretty Republican straight down the line. So he hasn't really brought those populist ideals. So those people get frustrated and they search for another source. And then in comes Cyril Dunham. What's good? It's lit.
I mean, what is good? What's your thoughts on gun control? Do you have, actually, before we even get into anything else?
So that's a great question.
My first question is do you have, can I have the website link, by the way?
Yeah, of course.
I think you already sent it a while ago, but I just don't have it.
I'll text it to you in a second.
That's fair. Can you use Hangouts?
I think it's a solid idea for next Sunday. Hopefully oh, wait, what? You said hang on?
No, Hangouts. Send it to me in Hangouts.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. I think next week it's a solid idea to talk gun policy and get in the weeds about that. And I think the only thing we really need to read, because it'd be pretty relevant, at least for me, the only thing I'd like us to at least skim and know a little bit about, especially for me and maybe for Chad if he decides to step out on a limb and try to run himself, which I think is highly doubtful. And I don't blame him. It's because he's young and he's like, dude, I don't have credentials. I'm like, all right, that's fair. But no, talking about the SAFE Act, because it would help me research that a little bit, because every time I drive home, I drive up in the northern part of the district, and there's a lot of repeal the SAFE Act signs.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's definitely something to be informed about.
For you, absolutely.
I think the big questions about, and we'll do this next Sunday with Chad too. The big questions about gun policy would be, where do you draw the line between an acceptable weapon for the public to own and the public to not own? And another question would be, how far should background checks and kind of just that go? Because when you say background check, most people just think of a simple check, but it could mean anything. It could be pretty way too intrusive or not intrusive enough. So those are the two things that come off the top of my mind. Because obviously we all can agree that citizens shouldn't own tanks and shit. No. So that's what I mean by where do you draw the line? It could be hey, citizens should have tanks. That's fine. Just argue your point. I don't. It would be an interesting
number
one.
Yeah, I think they can have tanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the truth is, number one, can't nobody afford one. And that was terrible.
Yeah, most
English
people can't
on my part, but most people can't.
Most people can't afford it. No, right? No, they can't.
Right. That's like having an F-18 fighter jet. Yeah, sure.
And that's a part of the argument. That's fine. If you think that will limit, that means you think that will limit enough. We don't need to actually limit that, and that's fine.
I think most people that are into tanks, quite frankly, if we're talking about tanks specifically, you can have a tank. What you can't have is shells. You can't have 120 shells to fire.
Right. Because if you take away the possibility of firing, then yeah, of course I own a tank. I don't give a shit. Right.
But when we're talking about guns here, right?
What I
struggle with, for me, is the amount of people that do own firearms responsibly, again, are being punished for things that they're not going to do. That's where I struggle.
Right.
Personally. It's like saying, well, you can't have a Lamborghini because it goes too fast and you could kill someone with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you're not being an a-hole and you're taking your Lamborghini to the track to race it as opposed to 490, well, why should, you know what I mean? Why should that person be punished?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm specifically talking about the AR model. Why is it that we're saying you can't have an AR model and you can't have a 30-round mag? Because for me, there's two sides of it. Number one, again, we do have these freedoms which afford us the opportunity to pursue the things of which we enjoy. Whether you like to be a furry or whether you like to shoot AR-15s,
Right.
Ultimately,
well, that's apples and oranges. Furries don't kill people, but
well, what we're talking about. Okay, I mean, pick any other thing. I don't care. Anything with the opportunity to be self-destructive in nature, right? You're talking about an AR-15, and we're targeting a specific weapons model that I think the numbers bear out. I'd have to double check, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure that pistols kill more people than long rifles do. In this country specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, right now with a pistol, you do have to have a background check. You do have to go through a registration process. And people still get them and people still kill people with them.
Yeah.
And you're just adding another gun model to the same practice, of which we've seen already doesn't actually impact it the way that you want it to or I want it to.
I think what strikes me, and this is also apples to oranges, I admit it, but these people are human beings as well. What strikes me is I look at the list of the hell did I just do? I look at the list of large countries in the world and their homicide rates and how it specifically relates to guns. In countries like Japan, 2 people that get murdered by a gun a year. It's so insanely low.
But that's a cultural.
It just makes me wonder why. Sure, fine. And we can. I said it's apples to oranges. Hang on. I said it's apples to oranges. Their answer isn't going to be the way that we answer. We have the answer here, but we should at least take a look at why the hell and figure out why that is, or at least try to figure it out. Why has that happened, or whatever. What has worked for them? And once again, that doesn't mean it's going to work over here. But it's not a terrible idea to just peek over and be like, well, what the hell's going on over there? Could it relate to here? Could parts of it relate to here? You never know.
By no means am I saying that we should ignore what other people do. I do believe though that we should
Right. No, I know.
look at it objectively. And I feel like when you're comparing Japan to
Right.
America, the biggest thing is
Right.
culture. For them culturally, um, I mean they just don't kill people. They don't do a lot of that to begin with, regardless of how they
Right.
kill people. They just
Right.
they just
Right.
don't kill a lot of
Right.
people.
And right. And if we actually know shit, send over a team of researchers and they dig through some data and they walk through some shit for a while and come back and I'm the one having to make the decision and they look me in the face and they say, "Look, the reason why they are the way they are is just like literally only because of culture and differences that we can't fix. We can't pursue anything that works over there." Okay, that's fine. But I show me that study that we've done. Like I don't know. It's such a hot button issue. I'm sure that there's not a lot of studies being done on that because I don't know. It's just one of those things. I don't know.
I feel like really
And
what we're
maybe it
talking
has
about
been done,
here.
but I'm just asking. I'm just asking the questions that I would ask if
Yeah,
I was in power. The
right,
minute I got into power, I'd be like, "Well, have we done this?" And if we have, that's fine. I just want to see it.
right. Can I read
So
it? Can someone explain it to me?
right, exactly. Well, just can I read it? Not
For me,
me.
the biggest
Unless
thing, the biggest thing that we have
yeah.
to look at, in my opinion, is this drug war because a lot of murders done by guns
Right.
are driven by
Yeah.
drugs. So,
If
is
you
there a better
right.
way that we can look at drugs?
Right.
Right, because that also affects our prison system, it affects social welfare,
Right.
it affects so many different things that I think we really need to take a hard look
There's a
at
whole section of our policy where we punish people. You just said stop punishing people for making choices. We're also punishing people for choosing to use, and maybe we need to reconsider that in this equation. Absolutely, it sets up whole underground markets. It sets up
that.
a whole society that basically demonize users. When I'm not saying 100%, maybe we should just start treating them, but maybe a little bit of treatment might go a long way for some of them. Who knows? Like instead of just jailing them. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of so I think and this is what's kind of scares me the most about. I'm willing to say the most about Trump's administration. We need to have the government first and foremost for me. The government should be collecting data on society and building a baseline set of facts and data that we can start building and making decisions off of. Our
Hmm.
biggest failure is that we're not doing that efficiently. Our biggest failure is that we're not. Trump administration comes in, and I've read plenty of articles where they're like, "Oh, the EPA or the FBI is releasing only half the data they used to, and the EPA is censoring some pages of their website and not releasing some data." And that's the wrong thing to do. I think that the Trump administration is playing games with their interests. But guess what? I guarantee you that the previous administrations all did it too. And it's really eroding trust in the government. We need to have some sort of separate entity or something that builds this, like you were just saying, you're interested in how many handguns versus AR are killing people. I tend to agree with you. I would like to think common sense dictates it's probably handguns, but who knows?
Right.
We need to be able to have an easily pullable internet exists website that you can just find facts and no shit facts. Nothing that anybody can say like, well, that's fake news. That's the problem we have.
Well,
Man, we got to get
we
there.
have to get over this whole fake news thing, right? What we really
I
need to
know.
be doing is saying, okay, this is the data that's been collected. Let's look at it as objectively as we can, and let's see
Mhm.
what we come up with. And
Right.
the whole fake news thing is
Right.
I feel like perpetrated by people who don't want to have the tough conversation. They don't want to sit here and say, okay, maybe, and like I was
Right.
saying to Dad earlier today,
Right.
maybe my ideas aren't as good as I thought they were. People don't like to
Mhm.
confront that reality. That's sometimes what they're thinking is,
Right.
what?
Right.
And that's why, again, I enjoy talking with you, Chad, because I have to constantly defend my ideas and constantly defend my thoughts and what I'm thinking and
Right.
how I'm going about my process. And
Right.
if you have to constantly do that, right? Iron sharpens iron. That's my thought process towards it.
Right. Well, and if you're lobbing in viewpoints and ways that you think that are completely opposite of the other person, they're definitely not thinking in those ways. So when you lob those in, it forces them to say, "Oh, okay, like,
I never considered.
that's correct, exactly."
I never
Dude,
thought about. I've never
and
been
you're right.
challenged in
I
that
think a lot of
regard.
why Donald Trump got elected, like I said already, and like we already know, is anti-establishment. But I think it's in
Mhm.
the sense that like people really want to start rethinking things on a much bigger scale than we do currently. Yes, and I readily admit, that a lot of these people are probably and already have been let down by Trump in this sense because like it's hard to work in the system we have and change things quickly, right? That's the point.
Mhm.
It's very difficult. Right now, I think there's a lot of resentment and there's a lot of. We live in an age of quick, like really fast change, and government hasn't caught up. And I think there's a lot of resentment because of that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I understand that we have things the way they are and we're not going to change them. So I think that we really need a solid leader that can do what I said earlier. And everybody, and a lot of people thought it might have been Trump, and a lot of people gave him a chance. Even I did a little bit at the beginning, and he failed miserably. We need someone who's a solid leader who can bring enough people together and put enough pressure on things, on politicians from their bully pulpit as the president. Exactly like Teddy Roosevelt was. He was the president. He knew he was on top of a complicated system that moves things usually slow. So what does he do? He gets out there in the public and he just pushes his agenda, and anything that's popular, you press those buttons because it's popular already. So if politicians are dragging their feet on stuff like chip, Trump could have and should have been that guy that's like, this is ridiculous.
Mhm.
Get it done. People want it done. Like, sit at the table and get it done. And
Well,
just
that's why I'm
put
such
that
a big
pressure on
fan of
them.
TR. Is because you're right. Using that bully pulpit.
Be a fire breather.
Yep.
Right. Be a fire breather. We need that. We need the system to be constraining in a lot of ways. We do. And Trump has showed us that. But we also need someone who from the bully pulpit to push things forward, especially if you're elected as the president on a populist agenda. Like, people want you to like push that forward. So I think, and I'm already thinking about this right now, the way that I'm campaigning is going to be a lot of populist things. Dude, the populist message is one that
Well,
resonates with me, but the problem is we can't get 100% to a populist message because there's a lot of competing interests and factors. Like the whole drug war, it might even be popular opinion that a lot of these, not all, but a lot or significant amount of these drugs become legal or regulated in a different way. But oh man, it's so baked in the cake that it's going to be difficult to get there,
yeah, but I mean, I would use the example of
So
like gay marriage. Like, how long have people been fighting for the right to
yeah, that
be
happened real
married to each
quick.
other? Well, I mean,
Right.
what I'm saying is how long? Because
A long
after it
time.
happened, right, it's been a long time, and then after it was finally finalized in certain states, then you had other states with like that one lady, that religious lady. What was her name?
Kim Davis.
Kim
I'm Kim
Davis was like, you know
Davis.
what? No, I'm not going to give you. Like, it's an ongoing thing, and
I'm
and
Kim
that's what
Davis.
I appreciate about our
Right.
political system is that if it's a really good idea, it's going to take you 20, 30, maybe 40, 50 years for it to get across,
Right. And I
get
appreciate that.
across the finish
And
line.
at the same time I recognize we live in a day and age that things change really fast, and we kind of need to reflect that a little bit in our government as well. And so
I don't know
who's the
about
kind
that.
of person that can do that? That kind of person is a populist bully. Yeah. I mean, look, that's my opinion. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
That's my
No,
opinion.
I got you. What I'm saying is that
Right. And
there are definitely pros to having a slow moving government.
there are.
You know
There
what I
are.
mean? Like, for
There
example,
are.
when you want to do a travel ban, we go, well, you know what? No, we're going to go to court and figure this out.
Right. No, I know. Um, and that's
That's
the way
all
it
I'm
should
saying.
be.
There's pros and cons to it. I think that government does move
There might be
too slow, but I don't want it to move very much faster either. That's just my opinion.
right. Yeah.
Because what we really
Yeah.
want is ideas to have to sustain long-term scrutiny and hold up before we fully implement things. Because realistically, like, yeah, something might be a great idea in the first 5 years, and then we realize 10 years later, like, oh, Jesus, we did not think about this. And now we're stuck with it for 20 or 30 before it gets changed.
Right.
Or either that, or you have a constantly fluxing government, which is unstable. right? When you go from a Democrat to a Republican, back to a Democrat, back to now quote unquote a Republican, how much true day-to-day change or term-to-term change have we seen? Not a ton, not directly impacting us. Whereas if government can move that fast, right now, all these taxes would have been changed already. You would have seen it in your paycheck already. Like it would have moved so fast. And then all of a sudden the next election you're like, "Oh, nope, we're raising taxes again. Now I didn't make as much." And that directly impacts people, and that creates, in my opinion, a very unstable process. And you don't want that either.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's tough. It's a tough thing. It's a very delicate balance that we're very, very bad at doing.
There might be some things that we can all say like and agree and be like, hey, look, these are priority things that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, right, net neutrality is a priority thing. That to me needs no discussion, because the fact that you here in America can start making whatever you want to make in your house, right? Let's say you knit skirts. You can have an online business. You can start a business in like 2 hours and have all the paperwork ready and have a website and have traffic come to your website because you're trying to sell something. But with net neutrality, right, I can't guarantee that my website's going to, not guarantee, but I'm going to have to pay potentially more money depending on how it pans out in order to get traffic to my site, in order for people to buy my goods and services, which is going to make my goods and services cost more, which in effect might make me unsuccessful because somebody else can provide it cheaper and they're willing to pay the ISPs money for better traffic. Like that's not an open free market. Like I feel like the ISPs can potentially have the power to do what they're doing already in their markets. Like when you have a monopoly or duopoly, like you're very limited. Right. You don't have any choices. And I feel like if we have net neutrality and our traffic is dictated, you can have the same thing in other markets. And I don't want that.
So, right. So net neutrality, especially in a lot of things, but when it comes to net neutrality, any I feel like intelligent person that can look at the evidence, no matter how they feel, even if they're more of a freedom conservative minded person, can look at the level, the not levels, but lack of competition thereof, and say like, okay, because there's not a lot of competition, we need to approach this like in a different way. Like clearly, because there's not competition, this can be abused in certain ways. And I'm not saying everywhere there's not competition, but it's definitely a different kind of market than just a freely saturated, healthy competitive market. It's not one of those. And so for me, net neutrality is a big indicator to me that big money makes a huge difference in Washington these days, because not one Republican, and this issue rakes Republicans over the coals. Don't get me wrong. There's also ones that can rake Democrats. It goes both ways. This one's just specifically Republicans. Not one Republican will get on board. Not one Republican will say, yes, maybe we need net neutrality. Not one Republican will challenge their usual freedom of market ideals and say, maybe this doesn't make sense. And it's not because they're stupid. I know it's not because they're stupid. There's plenty of intelligent conservatives in the Capitol. It's because they took money and they feel beholden to that money, and that's a problem.
Sure, but
that's a problem.
Let's see here.
Clear indicator of the biggest issue that faces us today. There are plenty of super intelligent, right-minded people that I have conversation with that have told me, yeah, we probably shouldn't look at it in this free up the market way because there's not enough competition.
But okay, so what are you talking? Are you talking specifically about ISPs and their competition, or are you talking about the internet and having an open internet to provide competition? Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about ISPs being able to compete against each other.
Right. So the problem with that, and I've explained this before, is that it's
I know
it's insanely difficult to start an ISP. Not because of any limitations. It has nothing to do with the fact that Charter doesn't want you to have an ISP. It has to do with the fact that the initial cost to creating the infrastructure to provide that service is fucking astronomical.
You're going to tell me that Charter doesn't spend money to keep other interests out of the area.
They don't have to.
A community in Colorado. Hang on, just hear me out. I shouldn't have said it like that. But a community in Colorado last year voted for community broadband. And it came out that big ISP interests spent over $1 million on TV ads in the run up to that campaign.
Yeah, okay.
Don't
so
tell me they're not
hold on.
spending money to lobby and to fight against each other's interests.
You're missing what I'm saying. You're missing. When you talk about community broadband, that's different because it's the state or the community that owns utility access, right? They own it. So they could do it for an insanely cheap amount of money. That's different. They will fight that. What I'm talking about is a private business or a group of people who are investing on their own to build out an ISP network. That's different. That's insanely expensive. But if you're talking about a community network, that's going to be much cheaper for whoever wants to build that.
So
because they already own access.
The fact that it's going to be insanely expensive and it's a different kind of startup cost means that we have to approach that. It means that it's going to be tough to get healthy competitive markets in there to make sure that consumers are being well serviced. And if competition's not going to be there enough in a form to control costs and make sure people can't abuse power, especially to something like the internet, which is very important, then there needs to be oversight.
I'm not disagreeing with
you. No, I know. I'm just saying the way I feel.
Right. Well, what I want to explain is that it's just a very difficult thing to start an ISP.
And if it's difficult to start, that means the markets are going to play differently, and they might.
They're going to play by different rules. You need to have a Google that steps up and says we're gonna run fiber because they have the money, they have the play money to do something like that. Nobody else really does. A Microsoft could do it, or even a Facebook, or you know what I mean, an insanely large company, Coke Industries, for example. Like somebody who makes stupid money would be able to dabble in that market, but it's really limited because of the amount of money you need and because these companies have grown in place of. I mean, Verizon is Pacific Bell rebranded, and Pacific Bell was around when we first started telegrams. You know what I mean? Like they've been a part of the game since the beginning, so they've been able to formulate and build in such a way that allows them to be in the spot that they're in. You don't just wake up one morning and say, "Here's my 5-year plan, and I'm going to be an ISP." You need probably $1 billion, if not more. And it's just insanely difficult to come up with $1 billion to say, I'm going to compete against Charter, Verizon, Comcast. People are just going to look at you and be like, they're going to kick your ass because they already have the infrastructure in place. It just costs too much money. So that's what sucks about it. And you're right. What needs to happen if we're in that situation is some level of oversight.
Right. And people say, oh, well, net neutrality didn't get put in place until 2015, and it was kind of fine before that. And all right, that's fine, but
well, it was fine before that because we still had fucking Blockbuster.
Yeah. Right.
We were still
they didn't dominate so much of entertainment.
Right, exactly.
Right.
We didn't have really
and even so we can
to the way this is now.
Or Hulu. And even so we can even if what this person was saying is true, we can have we can still have an honest conversation about how power might get abused in certain ways.
Yeah.
If it wasn't before, it doesn't mean it can't be moving forward. And like we've mentioned, the internet is a delicate conversation to have because it's such a vital part of a lot of our lives these days. I'm still not willing to say it's necessary just yet, but it's super vital. So, it's like you said, it's tricky. It's tricky. I wish that, and maybe this does happen, but it doesn't seem like the solutions are the same. I just wish that people would get into a room that we're on two different sides of the equation and just talk it out. That's the kind of government I wish we had right now.
It's also just not feasible.
Look, I know that just because you get in a room, I know that, right, which also sucks. I know that just because you get in a room doesn't mean you're going to find a solution. You could wildly disagree on all kinds of things. But if you at least get in a room and you disagree and you can't find any agreement, at least compromise by like, all right, you take this, I take that, you take this, I take that. Do something. I'm the kind of voter, I'm the kind of person that I'm at the point, and this is why we started this. I'm to the point where I'm so frustrated that like Trump's tax bill being passed, I've said many a times, was distasteful to me and could have been done differently and better or I would have done tax cuts differently, in my opinion. But at least it was something that got done. We're seriously, I'm seriously at that point. I'm like, nothing ever gets done. People just bitch, and then people just ratchet up drama, and then and the same thing happened with the shutdown a week ago. The minute the shutdown happened, what were people saying? Who's to blame? Who the fuck cares? Why do we do that every time? Every time. Who's to blame? Who the fuck cares? Get in a room. Don't leave that room. I'll bring you McDonald's and food until you figure it out. Don't leave the room. Like, so, anyways, I'm off my soapbox. That's enough for tonight. Unless you want a soapbox moment here. Shouldn't just hog that.
No, I mean, I think what I would like to do, though, in all reality, now that you have the website up, is we need to start talking about what your platform is.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of breaking that out as to like what that means to you.
I think the best way that can get done. How about this? The way, in my opinion, the way that they can get done with the least amount of headaches is recognizing before we start that we're all not going to agree on everything. We should obviously recognize that right away. And then 2, all we need to do is, like you said, we agree on a lot of the endpoints, which is a start. All we need to do is kind of talk about those endpoints, and we can still get in the weeds a little bit, but it doesn't need to be I don't know, it doesn't need to be so in the weeds, because I feel like if we don't recognize these things before we start talking about it, then we're just going to get way out of control with it.
Well, maybe.
And listen, I don't trust myself either. Don't get me wrong. Like, so, and we'll keep talking about it.
All right.
I'm probably going to go back, and that's why doing these podcasts are helpful too. Because if we kind of